But we begin this hour with the man who is showing how far he's willing to go to land the job as Trump's next attorney general. Trump's former defense lawyer and acting attorney general Todd Blanche made clear this week that nothing is off the table in those efforts as he tries to convince the American people and Trump's own party that doling out nearly $1.8 billion of taxpayer money to Trump's allies and supporters, including the potential of paying off those who violently attacked law enforcement officers on January 6th, is a good thing for this country.
Wouldn't the average taxpayer respond and say, okay, but why is that now my problem? Why do my tax dollars now need to go to people who are upset about their involvement in investigations?
I do not think the American people have issues with that. To the contrary, I think they do want their tax dollars spent on things like that.
Those efforts appear to be failing. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. Among some Republican lawmakers who have all but put their head in the sand throughout Trump's second administration. This request, though, it seems like it could be a bridge too far even for them. Yesterday, Senator Ted Cruz described Blanche's meeting with Senate Republicans this week on his podcast as one of the roughest meetings I've seen in my entire time in the Senate, and that there were multiple senators yelling at the attorney general, saying that this feels like self-dealing. And yesterday, 2 new lawsuits were filed to try and block the payouts from this fund. That's in addition to another one filed earlier this week by 2 of the police officers who defended the Capitol on January 6th. Joining us now to break it all down is Liz Oyer, former DOJ pardon attorney and federal public defender, and Glenn Thrush, New York Times Justice Department reporter. Thank you both for being here. I've been looking forward to this conversation. Glenn, let's start with you. What's Todd Blanche doing here? I mean, what is the strategy? How much of a role did he have in this? Isn't this just going to make his confirmation process harder? Or is the most important thing, above all, to secure Trump's loyalty and get named to a permanent position as Attorney General?
I think it's the last thing you said. Yeah. So the one thing about...
Because that's what I'm hearing.
Outstanding work on your part. The one thing you could say about Todd Blanche is you definitely want to play poker with the guy, because just look at his... I mean, he looks miserable. He, wears his agony on his face. And he's just being... he's just reaping... what he has sown as somebody who refuses to say no to Donald Trump. He has simply not turned down any request. And this, as we're reporting and figuring out how this all came down, it seems that this huge thing that he has sort of blown up the Senate and created this enormous rift in his party was an expedient so that they could get out of having to actually pay Donald Trump money, which Blanche and folks at the White House actually believed would have been a bridge too far. So believe it or not, this fund, this weaponization fund, which everyone is calling a slush fund, with no rules, no guidelines on who will distribute the money, and apparently no guardrails, was actually considered to be the best of other alternatives. This was actually their best possible plan.
But, you write, you wrote Thursday in the Times that Mr. Blanche has earned a reputation within the department as among the most conventional of Mr. Trump's political appointees, at times seeking to counter moves, including the president's push to indict Letitia James and other things. So this is more evidence that he is doing everything possible to get the official nod to be Attorney General. And
I got beat up for saying that, but it's true. It's like Blanche in comparison to, say, his number 2 at the beginning of the term, Emile Beauvais, is like
that's Judge Beauvais
is a relatively normal, conventional figure, I think. And as you can see, if you looked at his testimony last week in the Senate, he is he presents a more conventional image. He answers questions. He doesn't rip people's heads off. But at the same time,
has real credentials.
Yeah, he's got real credentials. He was an SDNY prosecutor for a long time, but he is. Yeah, I mean, this is the guy who signed off on the Seychelles case against James Comey, and that's pretty definitional.
I mean, when you talk about real credentials, I think, Liz, that's why so many folks, probably like you, are looking at him and are more disappointed in him than they would be Pam Bondi. I have been asking our team lots of questions this week. And they're like, ask Liz when she gets here. So here we go. On this actual slush fund, on this settlement that the administration is calling it, the Florida judge said that Trump may have been suing himself, that they were not sufficiently adverse, I think is the language that they use. How can then a settlement come out of that? Because if I sue my husband and we share the same account, how can I get money from, what is this? There's no settlement. The money stays right where it is.
Yeah, the Constitution says that it can't. I mean, the Constitution has this doctrine called the case or controversy doctrine, which is a requirement that you have a legitimate, genuine dispute with someone before you can sue them and get a payout. Now, this judge was clearly poised to dismiss this lawsuit because it was not a legitimate case or controversy, and she actually asked a group of independent legal experts to give her their opinion about whether it was legitimate. They all said it's not. She was going to throw it out. But then Todd Blanche and Donald Trump raced to the finish line to sign this settlement agreement before she could do that, and they voluntarily dismissed the lawsuit, which took away the court's jurisdiction to get involved. This is a settlement that would never have held up in court. It never would have been approved by a court, but they did it outside of court.
And one more question. Part of the settlement is that you can, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that Trump nor his family can ever be audited by the IRS.
Yeah.
How is that? That's not a law. How can that be legally binding? Let's say, Chris Murphy or AOC becomes president in 2029. Why couldn't their DOJ actually just ignore that?
So the acting attorney general, Todd Blanche, has legal authority to bind the United States. He's binding the entire country as our acting attorney general, and that would mean that the next president, the next attorney general, they would be limited by what Todd Blanche agreed to in this settlement agreement, which is one of the things that's so egregious about it. I mean, Glenn mentioned that Donald Trump is not getting any money. That's true, but the value of that waiver of the United States right to audit him, to investigate him, or to sue him, I mean, that's worth potentially billions of dollars.
With all the crypto and all the stuff that him and his family are operating in, that's questions.
Criming.
Well, can we get back to this? The conversation about conventionality in this administration. I'm not going to use the term Overton window, but the fact that Todd Blanche is the person who felt like during conversations in the lead up to this agreement that it was a bridge too far for Trump to pay himself in some sort of deal. That is what conventionality means now.
I think Blanche would like to be a vanilla attorney general. If given his druthers, I think he would be perfectly happy to be left alone and, go after fentanyl.
Yeah.
But that is not why he is there. He is there because he was a dog-loyal defense lawyer who was willing to accept Donald Trump's maximalist arguments. And to add what Liz was saying about the settlement, do we even know that it's even really legally considered a settlement? If you noticed in that one pager that was slipped onto the Justice Department website
after his testimony,
after the thing, I remember getting the call from a source. It's like, you get on the DOJ website right now and look at this thing. It's crazy. Some of these provisions were in all caps. Which there's one person I know who uses all caps.
Right. Is it Todd Blanche? No.
Maybe not.
So Todd Blanche, the acting attorney general, hopes to be the permanent attorney general, was asked point blank, will people who hurt police officers, January 6ers, will they be able to get the money? Yes. Watch this, his answer.
Would you be okay with people who were convicted of hurting police getting taxpayer money?
Just to be clear, people that hurt police get money all the time. Okay, there's a process where if you believe you have your rights violated, you can apply for funds, you can sue, you can file a claim, you can go to court. In some of those cases, the state, the government, the federal government settles those cases. It's abhorrent to ever touch a law enforcement officer, which is why anytime anybody does that, and it's a federal officer, we'll prosecute them.
We'll prosecute them and then pardon them.
And then give them money.
What the hell's he talking about, Liz?
That is just a lie. It's just a flat-out lie. I mean, Glenn's right that Blanche was viewed as this conventional guy before, and in fact, people in DOJ were like, Todd Blanche is going to come in and save us from Pam Bondi and Emil Bove. That could not be further from the truth. This man is totally given up on the idea that the Attorney General works for the American people. He has made it 100% clear that the Attorney General works for Donald Trump alone, and he will say anything he needs to, no matter how much plainly ridiculous it is, like what he just said there, to cover for Donald Trump. It's outrageous.
Have we gotten a fact sheet from the DOJ on this?
No, we have not. And first of all, what does Liz know about pardons? Talk
Maybe a little bit.
Talk about something. But, I mean, like,
Liz was the pardon.
That's the joke, guys.
Well, just in case people talk about it, why is he yelling at her?
Right. But here's how it works in this administration. The reason that he had that conventional reputation and had these expectations is why he's being so compliant. Because he was perceived. He's a former Democrat. He is perceived as not one of the MAGA crowd. And Trump has made it very clear. He did a shout out to him a couple of weeks ago in which he made it very clear, there's my friend, acting Attorney General. As long as Trump creates that tension, Blanche feels like he's on this perpetual audition.
It's
and he's
two-sided. I mean, Blanche was out there on TV saying, I love you, sir.
Yeah,
right, that's right.
But you know who was also at a Trump political rally a few months ago, or maybe weeks ago? Emil Bove.
Right.
Judge.
Someone to keep an eye on.
Not just Emil.
Judge
Bove. Judge Bove.
Possibly next Supreme Court justice for Trump.
Oh, I was thinking more runner-up to Attorney General. But
He's a judge now.
He's a judge now, lifetime appointment. Bove.
isn't he someone, though, that could maybe was in the mix?
For for Supreme Court?
Maybe he'll be
No,
both,
for
all
AG.
things. Yeah, I mean, who knows?
For AG,
Glenn?
get off the bench.
I don't
for
think.
that?
No, I
don't think so?
Well, here's the thing: I don't think they can get anybody confirmed. I think Todd
That
Blanche
part.
has to stay
So he'll be
as acting in perpetuity.
Well,
And let's not forget, there's a new DNI that has to be confirmed. There's a whole. Ooh, and if the Republicans lose the Senate, those are going to be some hot
if they keep it, if he
confirmation.
keeps pissing them off, the Republicans in the Senate
Well, that's true.
might
Well,
not
they're-
back his folks.
Well,
John
right, but they're-
Thune, this is your moment.
Well, you know,
Exactly.
they're pissed off now because of the endorsement of Ken Paxton over John Cornyn, who the Republicans like. I love our job. Liz Oyer, Glenn Thrush, thank you both very much for coming.